What up, though, Detroit? You're here with the main host, Umelo, founder of DevOps Detroit, and the co host, Justice. We are going to have a special guest today talking about AI and the impact of the workforce. Her name is Sarah Anthony, who is a state senator in Michigan. And I'd love for her to just talk a little bit about who she is and what she does before we start.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation. It's one that is emerging. Everyone is talking about AI and how it impacts different fields and what the future of work, the future of politics looks like. And I am in the center of those conversations. For probably the past 15 or so years, I've been in and around public office. I've served as a county commissioner, so someone working at the local level. I've also been a state representative, and now I am a state senator and the chair of the Appropriations Committee. That's the committee that manages all the money in the state of Michigan. And so when we talk about artificial intelligence and what it looks like for the state broadly, I look at it from both a policy lens as well as a financial lens. What should we be investing in now to make sure that we're preparing for the future, but also not leaving people behind? And I think a lot of that stems from who I am. I'm a daughter, I'm an auntie, I'm a daughter of Lansing, so born and raised in Michigan's capital city. And I think that I got into public service because I believe that politics should be a tool to lift people up. And far too often, people that look like us tend to be left behind when there's decisions being made in capitals and boardrooms and courtrooms. They typically leave us behind. And I have wanted to be a conduit to making sure that we're lifting everyone up. And when we think about AI, we already see so many people being left behind and not being included in that conversation. So if I can have a seat at the table and start to shape public policy with an equity lens, I think that's my duty to do that. And that's what I've tried to do for the past 15, 20 years in and around politics.
I think that's really awesome. I guess one of my first questions that I'd like to talk to you about, since this is one of a special type of topic, because it's the integration of how politics impacts technology.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the current state of AI in the workforce, like what are some transformations that you are seeing and that possibly seeing, and how does that correlate with AI?
Yeah. The thing that is both exciting but also jarring about artificial intelligence is how fast things are changing. I was on Instagram and I watched a few years ago, you might have seen it, like a Will Smith video of him eating pasta, and it was artificial intelligence, and it looked terrible. It was janky, pixelated, it looked weird.
Okay.
Now in 2026, we see that same, image of Will Smith eating pasta, but it looks just like him. I mean, if you don't have a trained eye, you'd have thought it was him. And we see how fast, just in a matter of years, how even for entertainment purposes, AI is starting to shape what we see and what we consume. But we're also starting to see how the workforce is starting to adapt to that. We're seeing the good parts about AI, such as finding faster, more efficient, more accurate ways to do everything, both in corporate America as well as in nonprofits and in the public sector.
Okay.
But when you look at how that shapes the workforce, I look at who's going to be left behind. The reality is that many of us, Black and brown folks who have low skills, folks who have low wage jobs in the service industry and other industries, we're seeing those jobs slowly leave. And what will that mean for Black and brown folks from modest to low incomes? I'm concerned about that. And a part of what I have spent my life doing is looking at workforce development issues through the college access lens. So I think about the fact that so many people are starting to say college is not worth it. College isn't for me, that you don't need the types of skill training that you would get at a community college or a four-year institution. Well, I'll tell you what, many of us need to start really thinking about what is going to make you as a human valuable in multiple spaces. Because as we know, you go to the grocery store now, many of the folks who would bag the groceries or ring you up, we're slowly start to see less and less of those folks. The same is true for other industries. We have to wake up now and figure out what is going to make me valuable as a human. And if we don't have those conversations and build infrastructure to have those conversations, we're going to get left behind.
Okay, so I guess one of my questions, based on what you're saying, is how do you think politics comes into play to help with those infrastructure?
Yeah, it's multifaceted. One, it's what we're investing in. I think we have to start looking at ways that we can train the workforce by more scholarships and grants, opportunities for folks to attend our institutions, maybe even for free. The reality is that many folks, either they have a degree or a certification that no longer is relevant. I talk about my mom. When she was a young woman, 2021, she got a typing certificate from Lansing Community College. Where is that valuable anymore? That you can type really fast.
That's
It's
true.
no longer valuable. So I think that there's going to be, millions of people across the state and the country that are going to wake up one day and say, my skills are no longer relevant. So I think government should be playing a part in upskilling individuals. There's a program we have here in Michigan called the Reconnect Scholarship, that if you're 21, 25 and older, you can go to a community college for free and get a certification. That's my bill. So I made that possible in the legislature because I could already see that the future was going to require us to get different types of skills. But honestly, a lot of folks aren't taking advantage of it, and it's not guaranteed that it'll be there. So one, I think government should be making sure that we are upskilling. From a policy perspective, the legislature has started to look at how AI is impacting our politics. We've done things such as addressing deep fakes, things that when we're looking at who we're going to elect, we have to make sure that what we're seeing and what we're hearing is actually true. Was that Joe Biden's image? Was that my image on a campaign commercial,
Facts.
right?
Yeah.
Because you and we're all, I think, millennials, right, that are sitting here. It's even getting harder and harder for us to detect these things. What about our parents and grandparents who are consuming information? Was that radio spot, President Trump, or was it someone else? Was that created by artificial intelligence? So this next election, we will see new laws that we've introduced that make sure that you have to disclose if something is a deep fake. You have to have those types of guardrails. So there's a public policy perspective here as well to make sure that at least the information that we're receiving is actually generated by humans and that it's truthful.
Do you feel that the policies are keeping pace with the advancements in AI?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And a part of that problem, to be honest with you, is the types of people who are making the decisions. We need more diversity. We need more millennials. We need more savvy politicians to be making these types of decisions. I talk to a lot of young professional groups and a lot of children in my work as a senator. And I always encourage people from all walks of life and professions to think about coming into public policy, because the folks who are making these laws, oftentimes they're stale. They're not keeping up with, these types of conversations. And so you get old thinking trying to create new policies, and it's just not working. So we're getting there inch by inch, but it's slow. And we often are reactive, right? When someone's child is taken advantage of because of a chatbot, or, these large corporations are selling our data for nefarious reasons. We often think of things after something has happened to someone. Well, I like to be in front of the game. I like to be prospective. How do we address something before it takes place? We're seeing that AI, this revolution is not slowing down. So I think public policy needs to speed up.
So a follow-up question to that, our audience is a bunch of techies. And obviously we're talking about AI, but also public policy.
Yeah.
What would you say for people who are in the tech sphere, but they want to kind of move over into public policy and still use AI? What does that integration look like?
Yeah. And move into public policy as in running for office or helping policymakers make those decisions?
Running for office.
Yeah. Well, first, yes, run for office if you got some common sense and if you have a heart for people. And I know that sounds silly, but too many of the people who are making decisions at the federal, state, and local level don't have a heart for people. They only are thinking about their personal gains, how they can eat, how their families can eat, how their industry can be better. I don't think that makes good public servants. And we're seeing a rise of that. And then also actually being an expert or well-read on a thing. For your audience, I know folks are, I mean, proficient, more so in this space, in this space. But as a policymaker, I address a multitude of topics, everything from agriculture, business development, ways that we can feed people, healthcare, housing, food insecurity. So it would be unwise for me to step into public office if I only want to address one thing. You don't have to be an expert at everything, but you have to at least be open enough to address multiple problems. Now, the cool thing about your audience is that I believe that folks who have a STEAM background tend to be able to bring I think, a unique perspective to everything, because they look at things not just through an artistic lens, but also through a scientific lens. And I think that being able to use both sides of your brain, even in public service, I think that that's important.
So on that, what would you say is like the big skill gap that, because we talked about reskilling, upskilling for people who are in, jobs that are likely to be taken over by AI. For the tech person who wants to get into policy and they already have that type A background, what's the skill set that they need to develop to really make a successful bid for office or area in policy?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think a few things. One is critical thinking, right? Looking at a problem and thinking about it from, a variety of lenses, right? So how do we make sure that when you look at a problem that you can think about it critically and see multiple solutions, right? Oftentimes folks look at problems and they can only see one solution. I think that that's a missed opportunity. So critical thinking is what is the difference between us and AI, right? I'll give you another example. There is a school, Ralph Emerson Elementary School, that is located here in Detroit. Now, a few days ago, they unveiled a beautiful mural of me, right? It was a huge surprise. I'm sitting there next to Barack Obama and Thurgood Marshall, right? It's like amazing. The poster that AI absolutely generated that talked about this event didn't look anything like me. It was terrible, right? They could have just put my actual headshot on a flyer. Instead, they manipulated it. It was crazy looking. AI could not have painted that mural with the expertise and the human element of it, right? That took an actual artist to make that happen. My question to anyone interested in public office is, what makes you different than AI? Policy making, I think, will always be something that will outlast whatever our technological future is, right? We will always need humans to stand in the gap for other humans and to make decisions for other people. So what could you, as someone in this audience, could bring to a table that's unique and that can't be outsourced, right? And a lot of the second thing I would say is actually having the ability to translate what you hear from people and translate that to public policy. So I'm in a lot of different spaces. My district is both urban, like the capital city in Michigan. It's suburban, right? We got a lot of suburbs that have a lot of wealth. And then we have a lot of rural people. So I get to take all of those experiences and then think about intervention to make all of those individuals' lives better. Computer can't really do that. And then I fight for people so they can feel that as one person, I can be a conduit for them. So I literally take their voices and bring them into the spaces in power. That's not something that you learn at a college or a university or through some type of class. You have to learn that by actually loving and living amongst the people. And I think that that's a skill that anyone's interested in running for office should gain.
Yeah.
So question, one of my questions where you're talking about where you're concerned with the workforce.
Yeah.
So you're talking about there's going to be job displacement, but do you potentially see also job creation from what you're seeing?
Yeah, I do. And it's a balance, right? I think there's absolutely going to be the potential for new jobs to come up. My question is, will we be ready for them? There's also bias within AI. We know this, right? There's bias with everything, with healthcare, with how they generate different data. Are we at the table actually creating these types of tools and resources. So I would love for all of AI to be infused with a racial equity lens. That's not happening yet. I mean, we know the disparities even in the tech field. And I fear that as we continue to grow and advance, are we at the table? Are we building these tools? So I give another example. There's a bill that we're introducing that's related to prohibiting AI to be used in rental policies, right? So you can use AI tools, right, to say, okay, I've got one apartment building and I want to make sure it gets filled with good tenants. So AI, here's all of the applications and you figure out who I should rent to. I'm pretty certain that if they see your name or your name, they're going to think, they might be black. So they probably won't be good renters because statistically, and they'll pull all the data, black folks don't pay their rent on time. I know that that's not true. But if the folks who are building these tools aren't doing so with a racial equity lens, that's what you get. Is you get it's spitting out the same things that make our society inequitable now. So yes, there's plenty of opportunity for jobs and careers in that space. I want to make sure we're prepared to be at the table to create those tools.
Okay. So I guess one of those things I would ask in regards to, with us being in that space, I thought about what you were saying. I was thinking about there's actually a Google. She worked at Google and she was an AI researcher. And one of the things her concerns was the lack of representation where it came to blacks and browns inside of that. Not saying that it's more so just with image classification, with just getting the perspective where now the tool can actually have our understanding. And when I say our understanding, the tool will be able to see, hey, the perspective of what you're talking about, where we're talking about where the black person or the brown person, rather than just a generic representation. So that's why diversity, I think, is really important with those diverse backgrounds.
That's right.
I definitely like what you were saying about that. I also like where Justice is asking, because I didn't even think about that, where Justice, you were talking about where, with future policymakers and the integration of AI, what there's coming, and something that you're speaking about, the biggest problem also with the lack of representation from a generation, where, okay, now the millennials are coming up and then next thing you know, Gen Zs are coming up.
Right.
Like how and like you're talking about like how to position us or position them in those positions of power where their voices begin to matter. Because as you can see, like AI is literally changing a lot of areas of discipline, and industries are it's a disruptor, but it's also a creator. Now with the blacks and browns and in the workforce, like what are some ways in the upskilling that you're talking about that matters? Because I know you mentioned something like now people don't care about school, which is a concern for you.
It's huge. It's huge. I hear all the time from individuals two things. College isn't worth it, right? All you do is you leave with a piece of paper that's useless, that's stale the moment you obtain it, similar like a car. The moment you drive it off the lot, it's no longer as valuable, right? So folks will say it's no longer worth it. And they'll also say you're going to be saddled with student loan debt. So like you are leaving worse off. We're hearing that. But then I also push back on those folks and I say, did you go to college? Oh yeah, I went to Michigan State and then I went to Yale for my, okay. And are your kids going to college? Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got one at U of M and one at Columbia. So they'll look at me and tell me, oh, college is no longer worth it. But then what you invested in and what you're ensuring that your children and your grandchildren are getting is two different things. So we are lowering the expectation for a population, a generation like ours, but what worked for them, they will continue to pass on for them and theirs. My point is that we have to just make sure that we are investing in young people that not just have degrees, but have critical thinking skills and are able to select degrees that are transferable, right? Throughout multiple career fields. The reality is that most of us will have somewhere between 5 and 7 different careers. But there are some professions that if you choose, it does kind of lock you in to one or two things that are very narrow. So I just want folks to be critically thinking about the types of skills that they're obtaining, not only within the bounds of traditional higher education, but beyond that, right? We should be lifelong learners, and policymakers like me should be making that easier and more affordable to obtain. So many folks will just say, I can't go to college because I can't afford it. Well, in Michigan, you can. Like, we have lowered so many financial barriers. The barriers are now in our head. The barriers are now, folks can't see beyond their neighborhood, or they don't have people telling them that they're worth it. I'm telling you what I know is that this future is not going to be kind to people who do not have skills.
Ooh.
It just will not be. And so I think that we will ultimately start to see folks having more conversations about universal basic income, just for like folks to just be able to survive. But I want our people not just to survive. I want us to thrive. I want us to lead these conversations. But it starts with making sure you're having early conversations with you and yours about what will give you a competitive advantage in that future. And it won't just be, I'll learn it on YouTube. I think that's just unacceptable for us as a people.
Do you think that people relying on AI for their education is too low of a standard?
Absolutely. I mean, again, when I talk to young people, these are, middle school kids and high school kids, the lack of writing, the lack of critical thinking, I had to do things by hand. I had to, whether it was just basic math, forming sentences and paragraphs as a part of longer form essays, even things such as like addressing an envelope. There's so many young people who intern in my office and they don't know the basics, just how to write a letter, an actual letter.
Really?
If we yes, and these are college students.
Man.
Exactly,
totally.
right? So that makes you feel really old, right? But then there's a generation that will say, you don't need those skills anymore. I can just generate that in a chat bot and then they'll just produce it for me. You are instantly starting to outsource yourself because you don't know the basics. So I do think that we will get to the point that humans aren't really needed if you are not adding any type of value to a workplace or a society. What does that look like for us?
So I guess one of my questions I would ask, based off what he said and just based off what you said, with what it looks like for us, what my question for you would be, what about when you talk about with the upskilling and with the learning, I guess my question is when it comes to with the black people and the brown people and what you're seeing from the trends and from just your perspective, do you think that possibly that people are starting to understand what you're seeing, or you think that we're not understanding what you're seeing?
We're not seeing it. I think that we see it through an entertainment lens, right? Like the things that we're consuming, it's getting easier to produce a thing like an essay or talking points or a quick form video or some silly flyer that, again, distorts you, makes you look skinnier and happier and prettier and all. But what happened to the ability to create a thing without those enhancements, right? So I don't think people are seeing it quite yet. I think they're seeing the surface level benefits as opposed to the long-term harm. And I think ultimately that dependence on AI, not seeing it as an enhancement, but seeing it as a dependent, that becomes really scary. And again, when I am looking at the future of public policy, the future that we're trying to build for kids, if that future outsources the need for humans, then I don't think I'm doing my job and trying to make sure that we're future proofing public policy.
So to add on that, and a quick question as well, this is something I was reading about where the kids who grew up with iPhones, you don't have to troubleshoot. You just put them out the box and it works, but you got to press one button. They didn't learn all of the networking and skills that we had to when we put together our first computer. Yeah. So even if we completely remove AI from the equation, we still have a generation of people who are living life kind of on easy mode. It works out the box.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend for them? Is it still the same solution as what you're recommending to solve the issues with AI?
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard. I don't have a lot of those answers. It is still hard to, as we talked about a little bit earlier, address the current needs, right? Which in my calculation, there needs to be safeguards. There needs to be guardrails for AI and in any technology. The basics of my job is health and safety for people. That's it. And when we look at, for instance, the generation that you're talking about, these babies, these young people, we see more and more national headlines about how Meta and other companies have strategically preyed on children. They have embedded certain tools that make it so that our kids are addicted, that they have access to things that no child should have access to. And they're being built that way. And so what do you do with the generation that has been preyed upon by corporations and are extracting that data to create harm? What do you do with that? And then how do we safeguard them, not just in this moment in their journey, but beyond that? I don't have all those answers. A week ago, we tried to pass a kids over clicks bill package that would create some of those guardrails to safeguard kids online. All the Democrats were going to be down to vote for it. We couldn't get any Republicans to vote yes. This isn't even a partisan issue. So even when we're thinking about the basics of safeguarding kids, we still have to deal with partisan politics. We still have to deal with individuals who, honestly, they say they have the best interests of people in mind, but then when it's time to vote for it, the regular, dirty, stupid politics stuff gets in the way. So that's really difficult. And I know I didn't directly answer the question because, quite honestly, I don't know if anybody has that answer yet. But what I can tell you is there are kids right now that, because of the inaction of public policymakers at the federal and state level, that they're in a worse position than what we are at our age. And we're not old, y'all. Like, we're just not. So I have a lot of fear around what that future looks like for them.
I have one more question to follow up. And this is kind of a deeper question as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the things you mentioned are kind of like reactions to AI. But what does it look like for policies to get ahead of AI?
Yeah.
To be the kind of predictor, to be the leading force?
To be honest, it's us listening to people in your audience, right? It would be amazing if I got people who reached out to me and said, I heard you on the podcast. I listen all the time. It's dope. I love those guys. And I have some ideas that you're not thinking about. You might be thinking at very surface level, but have you considered this over here? Good policymakers like me know that I'm not an expert in this field, but it's my job to listen to experts and then get in front of a thing. But I don't hear from people who know better, who are experts that can inform public policy. So that's a plug that if anyone who is listening is like, she only getting half of it. She's talking about this over here. We really need to be over here. Tell me so that we can try to get in front of it at the state level.
Yeah, so I guess for me, one of the things that you talked about with AI and its images. And the first thing I thought about, I know y'all gonna laugh at me, but when I get on the phone and it's like an unknown number and I don't hear anything, I'm not saying anything because I'm scared that it's gonna record my voice to do some scams with finance information. So you are right with what's going on with AI. It's a lot of changes happening. So I definitely like that you talked about that. And I'm a person who's in tech, so that's very interesting to me. I just wanted to share that, but that's totally off the topic.
But Mello, that's not off the topic. I know senior citizens, and by seniors, people who are my mother and father's ages, a little younger, a little older. I won't, my mama's still fine, so I can't tell you her age, but she's that deal. There's people who she knows who are scared to answer the phone because of that reason. And it's not a unfounded fear. It happens.
Yeah.
It is happening. If I got a call at midnight from someone who sounded like my mother, who said, I'm in need of whatever, I'm in trouble, I need money, I'm not questioning it most of the time. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do it. The same thing for our mamas, right? If oh my goodness, mom, I'm stuck in DC and I need $100, you're gonna do it, right? And so, but think about that. That now that's a norm. That you have people who are scared to answer their phone. That doesn't make any sense.
That's true.
How should government should be protecting people so they feel free enough to answer their phone, and not feel like they're going to be taken advantage of or exploited. But that's where we are. That's the role of government, is we need to be safeguarding folks so you feel free to click on whatever you need to or answer your phone. That's just not right. That's not right.
Yeah. So a little bit of a left turn here for a question, and
Okay,
just roll
left
with me
turn.
on this one.
Okay.
So kind of what you mentioned with people kind of, needing to reskill. I think we're talking about structural unemployment. Like, when the TV came out, people stopped using radio. We don't need so many radio operators. So there's going to be a huge wave of structural unemployment because of the efficiencies made by AI.
Yeah.
I read a book a couple of years ago that talked about how the benefits of efficiencies from AI go to the people that own it. So there's going to be a much greater wealth gap. So for a city like Detroit, where most of the people are Black and a lot of the people are, under a certain income level, I imagine that they're going to be on the lower end of that wealth gap. From a political standpoint, what do you think needs to be done, or what is currently being done to kind of support that proactively?
Yeah. The state of Michigan did a report. I don't have the exact title of the report, but it was like AI in the workforce, or the future of the workforce. It was through the Labor and Economic Opportunity Department. So I can send that over if you need the link for it. So there are things that are happening that are predicting what that will look like. We invest in things like Going Pro, a upskilling program throughout the state of Michigan that helps employers and other organizations like reskill, upskill, train people to say, look, we're no longer going to need you over here, but if you take 6 months worth of classes, you will be able to do this other job, right? And people have to be willing to change. That's the thing. The folks who own it, as you mentioned, they only have this much incentive to ensure that you do something different to feed your family. Ultimately, we have to, especially as Black and brown people, start to critically think about, can a computer do this job? And if they can, I need to proactively think about 3 other things that I can do. What are some classes at my community college that I can take? What are some degrees online that I might be able to take at night while I'm doing my 9 to 5? No one's going to figure that out for us. We have to do it ourselves. I talk about my parents a lot. My dad was a line worker at a GM plant in Lansing. And then he went and got a bunch of different skills, a journeyman's card, a skilled tradesman, because he's like, I don't want to just depend on GM to feed my family. I have to have 3 or 4 different side hustles that I can't be outsourced. I'm a landlord. I flip houses. I do these other things so that GM goes away today. My family's still going to be able to survive. We all have to be thinking about that, but not just from a side hustle perspective, but a survival perspective. Because I don't want us to be left behind. Folks who look at plumbers on the West Coast, it's one of the most well-paid positions that you can have because nobody knows how to fix a toilet. And so also looking at the jobs that often folks kind of like shied away from, those are now essential professions that you probably won't outsource in the next 50 to 60 years. Yeah. So folks need to really research what their next hustle is going to be. Yeah.
I thought that was a dope question and excellent answer.
Yeah.
Just before I close off, I would love to, is there any final statement that you would love to share to the audience? Any solutions or any resources that you think would really be very important to impute to the audience?
Yeah. I think a few things. One is that I hope your audience considers running for office at the local, state, or federal level. I love all types of diversity, and not just racial and like gender and all of that, but intellectual diversity. And I think that people who come from the backgrounds that your listeners are from could really contribute something to the conversations we're having in the Capitol. as well as at the federal level, right? Or like at a local school board level, at, you know, a county level, a city level. All of these types of decisions are being made, and oftentimes that voice is not represented. So run for something. Run for something is actually a national organization that folks can kind of like figure out what they would like to run for, what their passions are. So I absolutely encourage folks to think about stepping up and running for office. We are at a crisis point of recruiting good people to run for office. There are some clowns that are currently serving in office that have no business making decisions about what your tax dollars are doing, the policies that impact your family, your kids, your pocketbook. We have to get better people in office. And so that would be the first thing I would just want to emphasize. The second thing is like public policy is not your jam. You just are like, I'm never going to be on somebody's literature knocking on doors and raising money. If that's just not your thing, call people like me with your ideas, with your thoughts. Some of my most impactful policy came from the people. I introduced something called the Crown Act in Michigan, which makes sure that people aren't discriminated against because of natural hair. It disproportionately impacts Black folks, and particularly kids. That Crown Act would not have happened without a third grader and her mother reaching out to me because she was discriminated against on picture day and was told she couldn't wear her hair in braids with like color in it because that was against the school's dress code. Well, that's insane. My point is those types of stories made the Crown Act possible, and I get my best ideas about ways to protect people in Michigan because of people reaching out and like having these types of conversations. And I'm open to having in-person phone calls, you know, virtual meetings, whatever's going to get us to a better, stronger, more inclusive Michigan. That's what I'm interested in. And we have lawyers who can like doctor up the policies, but just an idea or elevating a problem, it really does inform good policy. So reach out to, if not me, some policymaker and share your ideas. That would be the second thing. The third thing I will say is the future is moving fast. It's moving fast. We do not have time for folks that have 1995 thinking or 2005 thinking or 2015 thinking. Now, I was a part of all of those decades, right? So, and every single one of those decades brought different challenges and opportunities. But I feel like things are advancing so much quicker now. And that is requiring all of us to also think faster. What do we want the generation behind us to look like? And are we future-proofing that for ourselves, but also for the community around us? The thing that I get really frustrated with is when people come to the tech space or to the art space or to public policy, they're only thinking about them and theirs, their family. How am I going to eat? How's my block, my community going to be better? We need to be thinking as humans. How are we going to make the human experience better for all of us? And if we continue on this, like, if I'm good, then that's it mentality, I think the future that's really coming at us fast will leave humans behind. And I don't want that. Do you want that?
No.
You don't want that, Melody? Do you want that, Jeff?
Absolutely not.
Okay, all right. So, so then y'all are a part of it, right? You're a part of the solution. And I'm excited to like have these types of conversations and learn from you all, and also grow as a public policymaker. So,
Thank you. I think that was really awesome. One of the things that really stuck out really is just the importance of upskilling.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just in closing, this was a special podcast episode. This one was very special and dear, where we're talking about something that really people don't understand. And that's the impact of political decisions in technology. So as you hear, there's opportunities to make that impact, not just on, say, our politicians, but on us, for us to step up as an audience, not just as individuals, as a collective, in order to have a voice. And one of the solutions that I believe DevOps Detroit is here for is to help upskill. So if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, you can follow us on our Instagram, DevOps Detroit 313. And then you can also follow us on our YouTube, DevOps Detroit. We have a workshop coming up. It's called Linux Workshop, April 4th. Follow for more information on the Instagram. And understand that knowledge is essential and the application of knowledge is essential. AI is here, but human capital is still imperative. Thank you.